Okay, we will get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us here. Hopefully you can hear us. I feel like I'm kind of getting an echo, so I apologize if you're hearing that. Welcome to our Monday, June 27th regular business meeting. If you have the agenda in front of you, item number 1 lists our strategies. Item number 2 deals with our face coverings. Item number 3 is where our live meeting can be viewed on YouTube. And item number 4 is our call to order. So, Ms. Steves, will you please determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
Wonderful, thank you. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Bellingham, thank you for leading us in the pledge. You're welcome. I do need to read a note here that Treasurer Ms. Courtney Cavalier is currently located in Massachusetts in a public location at Panera. We all probably wish we were there. 8 Steeple Street, Mashpee, Massachusetts, 02649. She will be fully participating tonight as a voting board member in the school board meeting via Google. With that said, every one of our action items tonight will require a roll call. And Ms. Cavalier, I can faintly see you, but more importantly, can you hear us? Oh, there we go, thank you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you, and we can hear you well. So wonderful, thank you. And please, if you've got something, make sure you just interrupt. Don't feel like you're interrupting if you have something. Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to item number 5, the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Mr. Olson. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
Yep. John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
6-0.
7?
7, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for that. The next item is number 6, School Board Public Comment Guidelines. I'll just briefly read this before we then go to our community comment. This is an opportunity for residents, business and property owners, parents, students, and employees of the Faribault Public School District to address the board. You must sign up in person at the board meeting and address the board from the podium. The podium's right here in front of us. Members of the public will address their remarks with civility and respect. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. Please state your reason for addressing the board. This is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear your comments. Public comment is not available at work sessions, closed sessions, or special board meetings of the school board. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student or staff members even without naming them in open session. This includes the public comment portion of our meeting. The board respects and values input, but when it relates to a specific student, staff, or to a specific matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. Anyone interested in making a public comment will be asked to complete an information card before the meeting starts, providing their name, address, and topic of their comment. All comments must conform to School Board Policy 206, which is available for review on the district website at www.faribault.k12.mn.us. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments on one specific topic. Each topic will have a total of 15 minutes allowed for comments. With that, I will call the first community comment, Ms. Linda Moore.
Push this down.
Yeah, you don't have, it should be live, so if you actually
okay?
push it down, it'll be
You can hear me?
Yep, as long as it's green, you're good.
Okay. Okay, I am Linda Moore. I'm a concerned citizen, and this is about gender ideology. There's an agenda that is being pushed in our Faribault Public Schools. It's gender ideology. It's being pushed by the Minnesota Student Survey, exposing students to gender terminology. This is a fact. Teachers in the classroom asking students their preferred pronouns. This is from the HYA survey last year. This is data. Books in the school libraries promoting perverse sexual behavior, even at the elementary level, and this is only a partial. And the list goes on and on. But what are the ramifications? As I stated in my last presentation, even a transgender psychologist is asserting this movement has gone too far. It's too bad that we don't have long-term data on this, and we don't. But when we do, what is going to be the ramifications? NBC, CBN, BBC, to name a few media outlets, are documenting how individuals later in life are regretting their decision to transition. What are the ramifications of this, of pushing this agenda? There's a bill by Senators Cotton and Banks that adults regretting their decision to transgender can sue the doctors. There's speculation that parents should even be sued. Will it stop there? You know, one of the things I see that people don't always look at the long-term effects, and I can give you examples, but it would take too long. But what about school districts? Is it going to stop there? What about the school districts, administrators, librarians, teachers, school board members? And there are retroactive laws. We need to think long and hard about what we're doing. Gender ideology is one strand of CRT. And I will say CRT, I will agree, it's not being taught in our schools. No, but it is the backdrop of all that is being taught, including math. In fact, the Minnesota Teacher Licensing Board will embed Marxist practices principles in Minnesota schools. And CRT is based on the Marxist communist viewpoint. I got it right here. This is a book that's being taught for the PSEO students. The goal of Marxism is to overthrow the current society. Make no mistake, Marxism is an anti-God, anti-American perspective. Is this what we want? You know, CRT's goal is to indoctrinate teachers and then by turn indoctrinate our precious children. We've come to a point when whom do you wish to serve, God or man? It's your choice. This is an ungodly agenda. Many in the community do not want this agenda, and that is a fact. So I'm almost done. But we have to think long and hard about this. What are the ramifications? We don't have long-term data, but we've got to choose. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. You got it figured out?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Our next community comment will be from Mr. Roger Steinkamp. Bless you.
Okay, thank you. For me, it's always an honor to address the school board and teachers and even more importantly, students, because I haven't been a teacher for 10 years. I love working with them, and especially teenagers. They keep you on your feet. Anyway, there's three things in my years of teaching and working overseas in situations that are somewhat comparable, I think, is that I have to base what I do on three pillars, and I've gone through umpteen workshops on how to organize yourself and things of that nature, but I boiled it down to three things. It's integrity, honesty, and passion, and they have to be in that order. You don't start out with passion, and that's what I've been hearing, way too much of it. Whether it's been in the school or whether it's been here at the school board meetings or just out in the community talking with friends, and I heard this in Eastern Europe too. I've worked with the communists. And they start out with, "I'm so angry," and let me tell you why. Well, then eventually you get into the reasoning part of it, and actually they do have, when you get into that part, well, then you can work your way back up. But it seems to me that when we're addressing issues, whether here at the school, take a deep breath. What are the facts? Let's get it straight. We've spent millennia coming up with this idea of scientific theory, and it's not all that complicated. It means that you question everything, you develop a test for it, you do it, analyze it, and then see if it sticks. And that's where you have to test the ideas that are coming at you, whether it's gender, CRT, what's it saying? And so let's get rid of the passion first, and let's get rid of the, let's not hide behind Mama Bear and Papa Bear and Baby Bear and whatever. Let's just say, what is CRT, and are we talking to our kids? Believe me, I've been subbing in your schools, and whether it's elementary, middle, or senior high, the kids know what's going on. They got this little friendly friend that's called Google. They can tell me about it. And if they don't know, it'll take them like 5 seconds to look it up. So we're not, by banning books or doing things of that nature from our library, don't fool yourself. We're not, we're in an information world, and the kids are masters of it. So I guess what I'm saying is that let's get it right. Let's start with integrity. That means looking in the mirror and say, who are you? And are you doing the right thing? Do you really believe what you're saying? Secondly, let's be honest about it and go where the facts lead us. Don't be afraid. That was a tough lesson for me to learn, because a lot of times I would go looking and test my own theory, and we'd have to go out and drink tea or whatever beverage you like and have a long discussion over it. But sometimes it gets uncomfortable because you have to question yourself, and then you come up with, oops, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, and then you can go after your thought with passion. And it does take that.
Mr. Steinkamp.
So, that's it.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. I don't mean to cut anybody off, but we tried our best to stick to that 3 minutes, so thank you. Do you have something else, Ms. Savage? No? Okay. Okay, thank you. We appreciate the community comment. This brings us to item number 7, recognition, awards, and presentations. We do not have any this evening. So the next item is number 8, employment agreements. 8A, consider approval of employment agreement with Mr. Zach Pruitt. Mr. Pruitt, if you'd like to come forward. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the employment agreement with Mr. Pruitt.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Steves. Any other questions or comments that board members would like to ask? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Pruitt, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself, and if you want to tell us anything about yourself, you're more than welcome to, but congratulations and welcome to the school district.
Thank you. Zach Pruitt. I've been fortunate to live in Rice County for the last 17 years and work as the executive director of the Healthy Community Initiative during that time. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to work in the Faribault Public Schools and with the incredible partners in the district and in the community. I have 2 grown children, and yeah, I'm really excited. I look to start on August 1st, so I'm excited to dive in then, and really grateful to Anne-Marie Leland for all the help and support in this transition to be able to hit the ground running.
Wonderful, thank you. Board members, any questions or comments? Mr. Olson?
Are you good at grant writing?
I am good at grant writing. I previously, before my work at HCI, was a professional grant writer as a business, and at HCI I have helped to author about $20 million of grants over the last 17 years. So,
Board members, any other questions or comments? Mr. Pruitt, just to reconfirm, HCI, which you led,
Yeah.
did a lot of work with our community education, right? So, I mean, you're very familiar with our staff and what we've been doing, and you've partnered on a lot of stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate to be able to work with the district on a variety of efforts, including the full-service community schools throughout the district, the launch of the RISE program in the middle school and high school here, as well as a variety of other parent and youth-focused initiatives. So.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, not hearing anything else. Welcome, and we appreciate it. Congratulations. Okay, that brings us to item 8B, consider approval of employment agreement with Mr. Joseph Timmer. Mr. Timmer, you want to come forward? With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the employment agreement with Mr. Joseph Timmer.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Any further discussion on this item? Yes, Mr. Olson?
Yeah, how is this going to work? The band director, how can that work out? I mean,
Do you want to answer that one, Joe? Or do you want me to go first?
You go first, yeah.
Okay, all right. And Jamie, you can certainly chime in too. Jamie's, of course, part of this whole process as well, but it's going to, so Joe will still be part-time at the high school with the band instructor, so he'll still be in charge of the high school band piece. The new person will be a half-time high school, half-time middle school, whatever the fraction is that they have for the whole thing. So we don't see really any issues continuing the successful band program that we've seen so far. The other person will pick up where Joe left off. So I don't, any more you want to add, Joe, to that? Is it, it's a summary?
Yeah, that covers it. There will be a .6 high school band director that will be hired. So we still will have a full-time band director at the high school, just be two different people doing that job. And then we will have some additional help for the middle school.
Yep.
have we hired that .6 or
We have not yet, no.
is it hard to find?
Well, it'll be a full-time, so it'll be a full-time person that we hire. He'll be, or she will be .6 at the high school and .4 at the middle school, which is equal to a full-time job. They'll have a little bit of travel between the middle school and the high school.
Mr. Olson?
This is Courtney chiming in. This is the position we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, we talked
Todd?
about it at the finance committee meeting. Yep, and we do need a little bit more help at the middle school as a result of the increase in enrollment in our band program at the 6th grade level, which is a good issue to have, I guess.
That kind of came out of nowhere.
It did, yeah. yeah.
Ms.
Courtney.
Cavalier, you kind of startled us, so.
Yeah.
Great question, though. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Olson?
So the online, is it the online, right? So that's not gonna be full-time.
No, that's going to be part-time now. Yep, and that'll be for this year. And then at the end of this year, in the spring, we'll reevaluate it again to see where we are with that program.
Okay, why go from full-time down to .6? I mean,
Yeah, we're losing some, that's a good question. We're actually losing some of the elementary students. More of those elementary students want to do the in-person learning. So we're going to decrease the grade levels for that, and then we feel that it's more of a .6 position now than it was a full-time.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
Yep. John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
No,
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 6-1.
6-1. Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Timmer. Welcome, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you like to say a few words? Thank you.
Well, I'm very excited. I just completed my 8th year in the district, and I found it to be a really great place to be. And as I transition to administrative work, this is the perfect position for me to kind of do that work on that transition. I'm still really excited to teach our high school students. So I thank everybody for this opportunity, Mr. Sesker, Mr. Benty, and Ms. Corcoran.
Wonderful, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, this brings us to item 8C, consider approval of employment agreement with Ms. Christine Botham. She's not here tonight, I don't believe. No, okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the employment agreement with Ms. Christine Botham.
Mr. Chair, also move.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg. Aye. Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Great, thank you. This brings us to item 9, the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg. Aye. Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Just as a note of information, our consent agenda does not carry discussion with it, so that's why I did not ask. So just letting everybody know. I do forget sometimes, but I did on that one. So. That brings us to item 10, retirements. We do not have any. Item 11 is the finance section. Item 11A are the minutes from our May 16th, 2022 report. Mr. Gertis, do you want to come on up? And I don't know if there's anything you want to report on there, or if any board members have any questions. I know you have several other reports, but the minutes are pretty much there. So anything you'd like to highlight, Mr. Gertis?
So, I have nothing really to share with the minutes. They are kind of what they are. I do want to talk a little bit about the enrollment report, which is, I think, your first item there in the financial reports.
One second, Mr. Gertis. Yeah, so for everybody following, that'll be 11B1. Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
Thanks, Chad. So, on the enrollment report, the last time we were here at the board meeting, in the revised budget that we've been talking about now for several months, we kind of estimated that we were going to come in at 38 ADM over our original budget. And last month I shared with you that after looking at the April numbers, we were right on that number, but that we might slide a little bit into the May numbers. So after truing it up with all the data as of the end of May, which is all the current data that we have at that point in time, our number slid by 6. So you'll hear me talk more about that in the final budget later on in the evening. But our numbers, hopefully, everything being equal, should come in hopefully at 32 ADM over the original budget. So 3,263 kilos. So any questions on that data? Okay, and then Chad, can I just go right into that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just a few things on some of the other financial monthly reports that we run. If you look at the comparative analysis report, this isn't anything new. It's just a little higher than what it was at the end of April. But if you look at all our utilities, as you guys are all well aware, as you pay your own bills, you can see that both of our gas, water, and electric are considerably over budget. And you will hear Chris and I talk about that in the budget revisions and adopted budget later on again this evening. Bottom of that report, we look at our health insurance, a little bit of a good news on our self-insurance fund. Again, another good month in terms of claim history for the month of May, that we are sitting right now at a fund balance at the end of May of $512,819 of a fund balance. And just to put it in perspective, last year at the end of the year, we had a revenue over expense of $26,100. So a big difference year over year in the self-insurance account. The other thing just to keep in mind with that account, very similar to what we had to do last year, is we have to book, that we'll be figuring out here soon, the IBNR. And incurred but not received yet. And those are all the bills that happened prior to Thursday, or on or prior to Thursday, that will affect the budget, that will receive those bills after June 30th. So that will amount to some added expense, but it looks like we're going to end the year in a good spot. If you flip to the next report, on the investment report, you can see just from a cash position that we were about $4 million ahead of where we were last month. A majority of that was we received the first two increments of our first iteration of property taxes for payable 22 that happened in the month of May. So you'll see that there on the fourth line down of roughly $3 million there. And the other roughly $1 million is just the variance in what we end up paying at the end of the year. Any questions on the investment report? And just to reiterate again, we are still investing money, but it is still on a very short-term basis as interest rates seem to change about every time we turn around. So. Last thing, I just want to report, if you look at our analytical report, the 4-page analytical report that I show every month, just a couple things on there. You can kind of see, looking at this, that we're going to be, based on the budgets, we're going to be very close to finishing right where we were at last year, maybe a little bit lower, but you can see as the two lines come together there, we're pretty close to where we were last year. Skipping just to the last page, all the other charts, revenue, expenses, again, remain pretty much spot on to less than 50 basis points, so pretty close there. And then just looking at the last page of that analytical report, just a couple things to highlight with that. I've talked about this a lot, but our food service budget, we'll talk about this again in the budget revisions, looks very well, very good. And again, we'll finish very strong again in the food service area, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then sliding down, you can see our internal service fund is doing very well, again, that I just mentioned. And our post-employment, again, is still suffering behind with the market conditions as they are. So any questions on that? Not a lot of new information that I haven't shared with you guys in the past.
Any questions? Okay, thank you for those reports. We appreciate it. This brings us to item 11B3, gifts and donations, resolution 22-28. I will read these all, and then we'll look for a motion to approve. Number 1, donations for the Nest at the Faribault High School. Carol Levi, bag of clothing and hygiene items. Natalie Nelson, a bag of clothing. Item number 2, Amanda Schaefer, through her employer, Alina Health, a donation of $100 for Roosevelt Elementary School to be used as needed. Item number 3, Bob Irby, donation of 1,623 books for the Roosevelt Media Center with a value of $1,623. Item number 4, the Faribault Booster Club donations, $4,000 for the annual software fee for the scoreboards in the Nolan Gym, and $1,580.12 for the new TV in the Felix Fitness Center. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the gifts and donations as stated.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Thank you for that, Ms. Steves. And once again, thank you to all the members of the community and the organizations that that made those items possible, and we greatly appreciate the support month in and month out. So this brings us to item 11C, items reviewed by the Finance Committee and are suggested for board approval. All of these were voted on at the committee level. Item 11C1, consider approval of EL staffing addition. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
And Mr. Chair, I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Mr. Bellingham. We'll open it up for further discussion. Mr. Olson?
Yes, is Catherine here?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, explain what you're doing here.
Yes, so this past spring, when we went through the budget cuts, an EL teacher was hired in the fall. We couldn't find someone who was licensed, and so we hired a social studies teacher to cover that need. This spring, when the budget cut was made, that person was cut as a social studies teacher. And so we lost an EL teacher in the name of social studies. At the ALC as well, we had a part-time EL teacher working at the ALC, and she was also cut. One of the criteria that allows you to be a student at the ALC is that you're an English learner. And so if we have English learners at the ALC, we need to provide that language instruction for them. That teacher was cut as an ALC teacher, and so it wasn't known to me until after the fact that it was actually the EL teacher that was cut. So we're just looking at adding those positions back.
Thank you for that. Superintendent Sesker, do you have any comments on this?
Well, the one big piece is to understand that our ratios are pretty high in the Big Nine when it comes to our EL teachers and our EL students. And we do need to lower that ratio down, otherwise we're going to eventually be non-compliant.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson?
Yeah, now we just discontinued the Newcomers Academy, right?
We have actually brought it back.
You have brought it back?
Yes, yep. Now that borders are open, we started at the high school with 5 newcomers. We ended the year with 18. At the middle school, I think we started with 4, and we ended the school year with 8.
So would you need to add this, or?
This is a big part of it, yes. So when we cut that 4th position at the high school, that really makes it difficult for the newcomers to get what they need.
So you are starting that program up in the fall, right?
Yes, yes. We will continue that support.
Other comments or questions? Superintendent Sesker, this is stated to come from the general fund?
Yeah, this would come from the general fund. Yep.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Hearing none. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for answering the questions.
Yes, can I introduce a group of people? Am I out of order if I do that?
I'm sorry?
Can I introduce some people that joined us tonight, or am I out of order? If I do
Yeah,
that?
I'm sorry,
Okay,
tonight,
perfect.
no, and just because it's not on our agenda, so thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Our next item is 11C2, consider approval of request for physical education teacher addition. I will entertain a motion to approve this.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Mr. Robichaud. Further discussion?
Could somebody explain
Yes,
this?
Mr. Olson.
Yeah, I can start, and then
Superintendent Sesker?
certainly if Jamie fill in, if you have questions for Mr. Benty too. We had originally made a reduction of a .4 FIED position, and then, of course, you go through registration and you try to figure out where the gaps are. And in this case, we found out that there were larger numbers, particularly in the weight room training curriculum, and felt that we needed to add more staff to help support that additional number of students for that. So that's the only reason why we're asking for more money.
Mr. Benty, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Unless you have more questions.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Robichaud?
Chair, I do recall when we made the budget cuts that Mr. Benty indicated that he still hadn't completed all of the enrollment, and that there may be a possibility that we'd have to make some adjustments. So I think this is in line with that discussion we had at the budget cut time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Would this be a safety issue?
I would say yes, it is if you have the number of students within that weight room. It would help with, again, it would help with our liability, yes.
And this person is trained on this equipment and proper procedures?
Yeah, in fact, all of our K-12 physical education teachers are
okay,
trained.
okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Mr. Robichaud. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
I would just like to add, I think it's great to see the amount of kids that are wanting to take a Phi-Ed class and be very active. So kudos to the leadership team that is doing that at the high school. The next item is 11C3. Consider approval of the Jefferson Neighborhood Project bid. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Mr. Robichaud. I will open it up for any discussion. Superintendent Sesker, would you like to make a few comments on this, please?
Yeah, so we're really pleased at the bids that came in, and a big thank you to Scott and his team for creating the bids and the process, and Kane, of course, to working with the city to coordinate this effort. So we did come under the budget amount, which very pleasantly surprised based on what's happening out there. And we are at this time recommending, I can't see it with my glasses, what the name of the company.
IMS.
Thank you. And we would like you to approve that.
Did you hand in your laptop already or what? Working off a cell phone here?
I forgot it at home. Sorry. I got it on the cell phone.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr.
Has
Olson.
anybody vetted the contractor?
Scott, that's yours.
So, excuse me here as I move everything up. So this project that we did, we actually had to hire an architect and engineer to do this. The architect and engineer have both vetted this contractor. They are out of Dodge Center, Minnesota, so they're not that far away from us, and have done a lot of work with ISG architects and engineers. So yeah, they have been vetted. This project also too, Mr. Olson has payment performance bonds attached to it too, so we have some security around that as well.
And some guarantees, warranties on the work?
Well, depends how you find guarantees. That's kind of a tough word, but the work is all warranted, yes, to be done correctly as per the bid specifications laid out by the architect.
Mr. Robichaud.
Sure, just one question. Scott, I assume that this is a coordinated effort between what they're doing on 10th Street now too, so.
Yes, it will be as soon as, if the board approves this project, we get the contracts and paperwork done. They will dig in right away, just to meet the timeline, which is, again, pretty aggressive to have this done substantially complete before school starts.
Because they're tearing up 10th Street now, so,
Yeah, they're going hard.
thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
And Chad, if I may, too, is just for the board's reference again, the board approves roughly $599,000 of excess abatement bonds from a 2019 abatement issue. The project, as you can see here, the low bid is roughly $438,000. There's going to be roughly $80,000 of soft costs, right, around engineering and architecture, PMs, shop drawings, and all of that, right? So we are considerably under budget, which should allow for a nice contingency as well as maybe some added things that we can maybe add back in as long as they follow the rules of the abatement funding for MDE.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
Thank you for that. Brings us to item 11C4, consider approval of MSA and FPS tuition agreement 2022-2023. I will entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second, with one question, can you tell us what MSA and PPS stand for?
We will in 1 second,
Oh,
yep.
sorry.
Yep, so we have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Mr. Robichaud. With that, we'll open it up for discussion, and if somebody can answer Mr. Robichaud's questions, it would be wonderful.
Go ahead.
I can take the first part of that. MSA is Minnesota State Academies, and what was the other acronym? I don't have it in front of me. I
Faribault
apologize.
Public Schools.
Yeah, FPS.
Faribault Public Schools.
I knew that. but I thought I'd ask.
Thank you.
You trying to confuse me? You're doing a good job.
Other questions or comments regarding this agreement?
Just a comment, I always say this, every time we approve this, this is a reminder that we make sure we approve this on a yearly basis. I asked Jamie to put it on his calendar, but it's important. It was missed prior to me coming here a couple of years in a row, and it amounts to about $350,000 a year. So once Colleen Murdesdorf got on board, then she was able to track that down and make sure that both those contracts are signed by both the academies and by Faribault Public Schools. It's a great relationship we have with the academies, and it allows kids to take classes here and then also participate in our extracurricular activities.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item 11C5, consider approval of Head Start Vended Meals Agreement 2022-2023. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion by
Second.
Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Thank you. Further discussion, Mr. Gertis, would you or Mr. Sesker just briefly touch on this? Tell us a little more.
Yeah, it's just a contract with our Sodexo and Head Start.
I can just elaborate on that just a little bit. This is actually new for fiscal year '23. Head Start reached out to us probably a little over a month ago and asked if we would do their meals for them for fiscal year '23. So it is just a vended meal contract, meaning that all we do will serve and deliver meals to them, and they take care of all the added paperwork and administrative costs around that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding this item? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item 11C6, consider approval of fiscal year '23 workers' compensation insurance renewal. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll
Sec-
second. You can give it to Leon if you want.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Superintendent Sesker, Mr. Gertis, would you like to address this, please?
Well, I'll speak to this, and I can brag about Scott again. He's done a great job of putting those bids out for our workers' comp. As you can see, it's a huge decrease for us. It's a nice savings, about $100,000 a year for our workers' comp. You will see a slight increase coming up next, so, but the net is going to be good news for the district. So thanks, Scott, for all your work with this, and I would recommend approval.
Thanks, Todd.
Mr. Gertis, anything you'd like to add?
Just a couple things is to elaborate on what Todd said. Yes, this is a huge savings for fiscal year '23. Couple reasons for that is that Kane and his team over at the maintenance building have also done a great job working around work comp issues that arise throughout this district and have some nice policies in place. A big one that they had this year was a return to work policy. So that is part of the reason, as well as claims, knock on wood, because things could all change by the time we get out of this meeting, right? are down for this year, which is what drives that 0.19 reduction in our EMR.
Board members, questions or comments? Mr.
That's
Wiltshire?
very encouraging, assuring that our individuals are working in a safe environment.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, I would just like to thank Kane and his team and really the entire district for likely following a lot of policies and procedures, because this is my 8th year on the board, and I can remember this going up and down. I can remember it going down by maybe 10 or 12 grand or something, but I don't remember it ever going down by 112,000. So clearly a reduction in incidents. So congratulations and thank you to Kane. I'm certain he's watching on a Monday night when it's beautiful weather outside. And Mr. Gertis, thank you for your efforts in this as well. So, and also thank you to the Hartman Agency. I think they're the broker or whoever on this, and for working hard on it. So we do have a motion and we do have a second. So with that, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item 11C7. Consider approval of fiscal year 23 property and liability insurance renewal. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg and a second by Mr. Bellingham. Superintendent Sesker or Mr. Gertis, would you like to talk on this?
Yeah, and as you can see, going through that, it's a lot of work to get these insurance quotes out there. So again, thank you, Scott and his team, and also Hartman Insurance for helping us out with this. We are seeing a little bit of an increase. A couple of those things are to catch up with our square footage, particularly at Roosevelt. So it looks like we are spot on now with our insurance coverage for all pieces, and thank you, Scott, for doing that. It is a slight increase, but you know, the net total with the workers' comp nets it out at about $70,000 or so savings. So thanks, Scott.
Just to add a couple things, again, too, as you guys know, cost of rebuilding and reemplacement costs is going through the roof. So the $14,000 I actually didn't think was such a bad increase, right, to try and cover those increases. The difference between the $31,000 increase and the $14,000 increase is really to what Todd says. We had some discrepancies on square footage. We're trying to true that up. We had the Roosevelt edition, which which brought that up to current square foot numbers, as well as increasing some of the coverages just slightly at our middle school and high school to get them a little bit closer to where they probably should be in the event that something happens here on the south side of town. So for reference, our total insured value of all of our buildings, just in case you want to throw this number around, is $200 million for fiscal year 23.
Thank you. Board members, any questions, Mr. Wilson?
What about McKinley? Now, we're still insuring that, right? McKinley.
Yes.
Now, is that vacant now, or is it?
No, maybe if you recall, I think it was the last meeting we talked about the fact that we have now more kids that are actually going into our 3 and 4 year old program, thanks in large part to Olivia Sage down there and Mary Mischke, who's been part of that whole outreach piece. So we do have those rooms full at Roosevelt. Now we're filling them up again at McKinley. So we're pretty much full down at McKinley again.
I thought we were going to abandon McKinley. Or actually not abandon, but ALC, maybe.
We talked about that, yeah, but we got more kids than what we thought we're going to get, so which is a good problem to have. Yeah, so it's full.
Other questions or comments? That's a good problem, I think. If you want to call it a problem, I think it's good that we have a lot of kids in there. So, other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Guaranteed to put you to bed. 46-page document there. Enjoy it. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Brings us to 11C8, consider approval of fiscal year 2022 final budget. I will first entertain a motion and a second, and we'll have Mr. Gertis present.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robishaw, a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Further discussion? Mr. Gertis, would you please walk us through this?
Yes, thank you, Chad.
You're going to share your screen, is that right?
I wasn't planning on for this one.
The next one you
For
will?
the adopted budget, that we'll go in a little bit more detail.
Okay, thank you.
So if all of you want to pull up the budget book for our, what's going to be hopefully our final budget for 21-22. Just a couple things that I really want to point out. If you guys could go to page 4, that's where most of the highlights are, 4 and 5. But I just want to reiterate just a couple things. Some of this is review, some of this is new. But this is kind of a snapshot of changes since the board adopted the budget back in June of last year, and the final revision and all the final changes that have happened all the way through the whole year up until today. So just a couple things to point out as we look through a lot of these things on here is we talk about ESSER money, right? And ESSER funds, and we throw that word around a lot. But as you can see there, we probably are working off of, I've lost track, but somewhere around 18 different buckets of money that are considered ESSER. And so I've tried to spell out most of them here that are in Fund 1, and we have a couple that are in other funds as well. So one of the things that this includes, again, just for board reference, is the 2.45% that the state gave us here for fiscal year 22. We've added some additional special ed funding that we think we're going to get for this year. But that being said, the final special ed funding won't get trued up until we actually complete the audit here, which is about a month away now. So in the next month or two. You heard me talk a little bit about our numbers. So this includes 32 additional ADM, down 6. We also have gone through the onerous process of truing up all the different state aid categories. And so that actually amounted to a decrease of $74,825 between all of them. So like 0.001 something percent, right? Pretty minimal in the big picture of things. And then again, all of the changes that have happened to the ESSER 2 funding and the ESSER 3 funding, which is the 161 and the 160. Now, one thing I do want to add that is actually new, that has happened here within the last month, is that we were awarded roughly $622,000 in another ESSER bucket of money for summer STEAM and for fiscal year 22 and 23 here this summer, right? So you see there on the bottom, we have $364,211. That's our estimated budget for June portion of summer STEAM, right? And then the balance of it will fall into fiscal year 23, which is actually next year, right? But for federal programs, it's the whole summer included. So you talked about the EL positions earlier. The EL are going to come out of general fund, that is true, but we're going to make some shifts between the general fund and 160, and then we're going to make some additional shifts between 160 and 161, and then we're going to offset that with some other shifts for 163, really to pay for those EL positions that the board approved earlier this evening. So I just wanted to remind the board of that while it's coming out of the general fund technically, there's going to be a series of shifts that will actually pay for it out of an ESSER bucket eventually, right? That makes sense.
Really simple stuff.
Right. That's why Chris is great. So moving down to the just to the expenditures here, again, they pretty much track with what the ESSER additional revenue is at the top. We noted here in the revised budget that we added about $651,000 through the additional salaries and benefits that happened this year through union negotiations. So if we slide down to the bottom of the page a little bit here, as Todd forgot his computer, I forgot to print this out, so I'm trying to work off my computer. Just as a side note, we'll see this in the summary slides, that we expect our projected fund balance to be about $6.4 million or 10.78%. Okay? That being said, I want you guys to remember that the percent really is just a denominator, a change in the denominator. I'm going to show that to you, so don't get caught up on the 10.78%. Really that is just a number, and we'll show that here at the end of this. We talked about food service, and we've talked about that earlier, but again, the food service will be ending our SSO and SFFP food service programs here on June 30th. And starting in July, we will move back to the National School Lunch Program, which was the program of choice, i.e. before COVID, right? I'm sure you guys have all heard that thrown around before. We have a couple different contract situations with SEVSET, Nearstrand. You heard the one here with Head Start that we're moving into in the Discovery School as well for this year and into next year. We did receive, and you've heard me talk about this, the extra $365,000 from last year that we received into this year. And then another new ESSER bucket of money is that we received that's new here as of the last month is $57,000 roughly in supply chain assistance funds through the USDA, which is again funded by the ESSER bucket of money. Okay. So I'm going to stop and pause there. Do you have any questions? Because I'm kind of going fast and I don't want to leave anybody behind.
Yeah.
Richard.
There's ESSER funds, I mean, that's gonna run out eventually, right?
Yes. Yep.
I mean, it's just,
About
after
2.5
a couple
years.
years, we won't hear that word, right? Maybe?
As I sit here and talk to you today, that would be an accurate assessment, yes. But who knows, right? Moving down to community ed, just a couple highlights on community ed. We've gotten, again, some more grants through community ed. Anne-Marie does a lot, as you're well aware, does a lot of work there. And just, she wanted me to mention too that their ABE funding has been held harmless, but they continue to move forward with a lot of contact hours and doing good things for the adults in that program. Building Construction Fund, Fund 6. So board approved just a little bit ago the abatement funds. Those are sitting in Fund 6 right now. We're going to spend those off. As well as most of the COP funds have been spent on the Roosevelt edition. And that is about 99.9% complete as we sit here today. If we slide down, I'm going to take you all the way to the slide, just briefly talk about the slide. This shows the iterations of the 32-31 adopted budget that the board approved for ADMs. And again, the 3,263 ADMs that hopefully is what the piece of paper says in August when we print it out.
Mr. Curtis, what page are you on us on?
I am on the graph, which is on page 6.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If we go to page 7, again, a little bit about this, but again, this shows all the unassigned and restricted buckets of money for the general fund, and you can see there's a lot of them there, all trued out. But again, that shows the end of the year budget projection of $6.431 million, and the estimated budget today that sits at a negative $376,000 in change. Okay, and again, that's based on all of the adjustments over time here. Okay, now we slide down to the very end. We're going to go to the very last 2 pages of this slide, of this book, I'm sorry. It's on page 19. Okay, you can see there is a running total of our 2018 through 2022 numbers. Okay. Trying to move through this. And if you look at the top there, it gives the summary of the ending unassigned fund balance. And so from 21 to 22, you can see that we dropped that $376,000. Okay, top line, 6.8 million down to 6.4 million, right? The percentage down below dropped from 12.72 to 10.78, almost 2 percentage points. Okay, we dropped $300,000, but because of the denominator in row 2 in 21 was 53 million. And the denominator this year, because of all the added extra ESSER money, right, was almost 60 million. Just naturally, the course of math, right, drops that percentage point. That's why I said don't get hung so much up on percentage points. I know we have to monitor that, right, based on fund balance policy. But just note that it's not really that much of a dollar decrease from 21 to 22. Any questions on that assumption? All right, otherwise that's all I have to share for the 22 final budget, unless there are any other questions or comments.
Okay, hearing none, we do have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. So Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
Thank you for that. Brings us to item 11C9, consider approval of fiscal year 23 adopted budget. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. With that, Mr. Gertis, will you please walk us through this?
So before I start, I just want to say publicly a special thanks to Chris Nelson, who you guys have obviously all met, Brett Martindale, and the rest of the accounting team. Looking back on our notes, we started putting this budget together back on April 6th. So we're looking at almost 3 months later, we're sitting here in front of you finally approving, getting this budget approved. So just a thank you to the whole accounting team for a lot of work into this. Chris is joining me tonight. He's going to share in the good news that we have for you with this budget today. And so I'm going to let him open because I've been talking a lot and does just as good a job as I do. I think you have to point it that way. Work, or maybe not. On the side.
Oh, okay. The one label on, I wouldn't have gotten that. Thank you. All right. Some budget highlights for the year, or for the adopted budget. If you total up all those ESSER funds, you get about $3.8 million, just a bit over. Those obviously factor into the budget. Expenditures, notable items, the three in green at the top, those are the decreases from the cuts made earlier. Below that, we have some adjustments for inflation on services, about $85,000. The fuel for transportation that Scott alluded to earlier, $110,000 in the 23 budget, and then building utility cost increases of $104. And then below that, we have just a bit over the $3.8 million expenses offsetting the revenues from the last slide. Just some other notes here. We've got the 10.37% unassigned fund balance. That is on 5.9 million. As Scott just mentioned previously, the food service big change that we're going back to National School Lunch. So, leave that there. Not much to say beyond that on the last three funds. Scott?
So this is a highlight again, shows a little bit more detail on our ADMs over time. So you can see where we were at with the 22 adopted, 22 revised, 22 final that we just talked about. And again, based on the ADM models that we went through about 3 months ago, that was approved by the board, we're estimating our total ADM for the adopted budget of $3,145. Moving down to the next, not dollars, ADM, I apologize, students, thank you. Moving down to the next one, again, so just to highlight here, there's not a whole lot of changes, but I do want to just reiterate what Chris had said. earlier. So we're looking at 5.9 ending fund balance of 10.37%. You can see that's a negative number of about $778,000. So just to kind of put that in perspective, based on what we've all been working through with the budget cuts, you know, we projected about a $1.9 million deficit for fiscal year '23. The board cut just under $1 million between expense cuts, and we had one revenue increase with the implicit rate. That left us about $900,000 short. Okay, we had some savings from our PEEP renewal that we talked about last month. Maybe it's 2 months ago now, where our PEEP renewal actually went down. So that was a savings of about $300,000 roughly, maybe a little bit more than that. And then back to Chris's point, we put more money in that budget for bus fuel, as well as utility costs, which we predict, and based on some research Chris did, don't believe will really decrease a whole lot in fiscal year '23. So we're trying to cover our bases there. The balance of the expenses we're pretty much on track to what we estimated back in February, that, you know, on the initial rough budget that we put out there. So that's kind of what we're looking at, is a negative roughly 0.9 basis points, 90 basis points, excuse me. If you slide down to the rest of the restricted accounts, you can see that there's not really a lot of changes there. A lot of these restricted buckets of money that we have, we pretty much use in their entirety year over year. And so that's not really a change. If we look down to the long-term facilities maintenance budget, that we think probably won't quite get out of the hole in fiscal year '23, but we don't know, right? That's kind of a moving budget that changes again about every time we turn around. If we slide down to the 462, the assigned, just so the board remembers, that is the long-term receivable that we have with Subset for that $318,000. And so that's assigned and kind of reserved off and kept out of the general fund. We move down to the food service budget, and again, as Chris alluded to, we're moving back to the National School Lunch Program. Reimbursement rates on the National School Lunch Program, at least last time I looked, hadn't been posted yet, but they're not as good as the federal ones that we were working off of for the last 2 years. So while we have a contract with Sodexo, as we all know, guaranteed to at least break even in that contract, so we won't lose money in food service, we do have projected a little bit of a gain, about $12,000. Slide down to the next page. Again, a couple things with community ed. Budget for community ed is pretty flat year over year, right? You can see that total between all their different restricted and unrestricted funds are about $40,000 negative. And again, that's pretty small in a $3.5 million budget. We slide down to Fund 6, and I mentioned this earlier, and maybe it's kind of repetitive a little bit, but we're really hoping to fully wrap up the Roosevelt project, both in terms of the construction itself, which should wrap up here hopefully in July or August when we finally get in the last few projectors that need to be put in, as well as spending off the contingency fund on some other projects for that school that hopefully can be done by next June 30th, so that that money will be completely off the books during fiscal year '23. Time will tell on that. As well as the Jefferson neighborhood project that we just talked about, and using up the 2019 abatement bonds. So again, those funds can be used up and off the books as well. Okay, we slide down to our internal service fund. Just a couple things with that. We have a couple different models that we use to project our analytics for our internal service fund. The one that we decided to use is obviously the most conservative one, that is done by Blue Cross Blue Shield, our carrier. Shows us with a balance based on 174 lives of about $6,000 at the end of the year. The one that is done by our TPA shows a balance of a little under $200,000. You know, as I sit here today, either one could be accurate, and but we're going to be the side of caution and go with more conservative number. And then we talked a little bit about the irrevocable trust, and so as you recall, the board authorized the balance of the implicit rate to be used into the budget to help offset the budget, and you can see that that difference there was $154,000 year over year, and so that is what is in the budget today. Expenses outpacing revenue by a little bit more money. So I'm going to stop there. Do we have any questions on those 2 pages? There's a lot of numbers on that. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris. He'll carry us close to the end here.
So here we have some year-over-year comparisons. For the general fund, 2 biggest changes here on the revenue side. You'll notice that the local property tax has gone up and the state aid has gone down a little bit, and that's because local taxable values have increased. So as our local revenue sources increase, the state aid goes down a little bit.
And I can just interject, Chris, on that note. Just so you know, you guys don't really have any control over that, unfortunately. The state creates those formulas, and then once that is passed, they analyze the wealth of the district. And as the wealth of the district goes up, the values of properties go up, then guess what? Your contributions go up too. So the state's responsibility goes down, and your responsibilities go up to support the schools. So you have no control over that increase.
Thank you. And then for the expenditures, a few notable items. Regular instruction is down about $2.7 million. Special education instruction went up by $603,000. And then instructional support services is down about $309,000 to last year. And then kind of slicing the same data a different way, this is by object series. In the salaries and wages, we're actually down $386,000. Employee benefits down $162,000. Supplies and materials dropped by $813,000, and capital expenses $769,000 versus last year. Food service, year-over-year comparison, as Scott mentioned earlier, we are going back to National School Lunch. Even with that considered, we expect to end the year still up $12,000, just under $12,000 over the year, and the food service fund balance is already really high, over the limit, in fact. So that's going to be sticking really well.
Gentlemen, when would you anticipate sharing more information on a spend down of that account of some sort? Right, I mean, you've mentioned several times it's high, so I don't know what else you can spend it on. What does that look like? But is that something that will happen next year, or that'll happen in 23, 24, or any thoughts?
So that's a great question, Chad. I'll start with this, and Chris, chime in if you have anything else. So we won't know exactly what our fund balance overage is until we actually close the books, because the percentage of how you calculate that is a percentage of expenses, right? So we don't know what our expenses are today yet, and we don't know what they will be for sure, right? So we don't have that number at least until we close the books and go through the audit.
Which is when?
The initial field work for our audit, we just found out, is August 11th and 12th, with field work scheduled for the 15th of September, 12th or 15th of September, whatever that one is. So, but roughly the same time as we had it last year. We moved it up a lot last year. We're trying to maintain that so we can be done with it, right? We have some plans, as you guys heard me talk about with the Sodexo contracts last month. We have some plans with the new position inside of that contract to do some more work out in the community. And as you heard me talk about it last time, we're going to try and continue on the work of that No Kid Hungry grant that the district was awarded beginning of 21, or maybe it was even in 20 and ended in 21. So we're going to really try and focus, because food service funds are so hard to spend down because the limitations are next to impossible. possible. We're gonna really try and do some things out in the community to help those people that are underserved and do what's best for the community. Now, what that looks like, Chad, at this point in time, I don't know. First rounds of interviews for that position are tomorrow. So once we get that person on board, we'll develop that plan, and then we'll bring it back to the board. But I'm guessing it won't be until October at the earliest meeting.
Thank you.
And just to jump off of what Scott said, it is really restrictive. Even some things you would think would be obvious allowable expenses, like replacing the tables in the cafeteria, it's just not something you can do with that fund too money. But we're always looking. We're always looking for ways.
Thank you.
Chad,
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
so can you update the kitchen equipment or what? We've done that before.
Yes, and we still continue to actively update the kitchen equipment, but at some point in time, you have a fully updated kitchen throughout the district, and we kind of run out of things to do. But yes, we did about 4 ovens this year that needed to be replaced, but we don't want to, spend money to spend money either, right?
Yeah.
So we'll have some good things that I think we can do out in the community that will gain us several benefits across the program.
Thank you.
Next one is Fund 4, Community Ed. On this one, not much to say about it. We are going down dipping into the fund balance a little bit, $40,000, and that's just to be able to provide a few more programs.
Oh, sorry. So here we are on the last page, and again, I want to just reiterate where we are going to end up, hopefully, for fiscal year '23. Now, the one thing to note here with this comparison is this is based off of the last budget that the board has approved. So this is based off of the 2022 revised budget. So the numbers are a little bit different there. But as we look at our adopted budget and the percentages again, we're not looking at a huge drop in dollars, right? But again, it does look like a big drop in terms of percentages there. Again, just based on the differences. And you can see our general fund expenditures over time, how they've varied, with 22 obviously setting the record there at just south of $60,000. Okay? So, that being said, we're going to stop talking and ask if there's one last time if there's any questions, comments, anything else?
Ms. Cavalier, do you have any questions regarding this presentation?
I don't have any tonight. It's hard for me to ask questions in this setting, but I also was in Finance Committee meeting on Monday last week, so I'm good. Thank you for asking me, Chad.
Yep, thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much for your time and effort and walking us through this. We greatly appreciate it. And we do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Steves. And Ms. Steves, would you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Wonderful, thank you. A lot of information there, and we appreciate it. This brings us to item number 12, the Policy Committee. We do not have a report tonight. So this brings us to item 13, other matters. 13A is the consider approval of Resolution 22-29 to rescind the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contract of a probationary teacher. I will entertain a motion to approve this.
Mr. Chair, also move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Mr. Robichaud. Superintendent Sesker, would you like to briefly touch on this?
Yeah, we just happened to have somebody leave the district, and I think it was a retirement. And so as a result, we are able to rescind this non-tenured staff and bring them back.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding this? Points of discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item 13B, consider approval of cooperative sponsorship, excuse me. Consider approval of cooperative sponsorship dissolution, girls cross country. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Oh, you'll make it first?
Oh,
A motion?
yes,
Unless somebody else did, and I didn't hear.
I did not.
Okay, Ms. Lechtenberg with a motion? Do we have a second?
I can second it.
Hey, thank you, Ms. Cavalier.
You got it.
With that said, Mr. Sesker, would you briefly walk us through this?
Yeah, we have it was a combination of 4 different schools, I guess, if you count the academies. The academies are almost kind of automatically brought in with all of our co-ops, but the co-op right now has another homeschool family that was out of Northfield. They wanted to come within our co-op, and they've decided not to anymore, so we need to dissolve that co-op. And then you'll see on the very next motion, we'll involve Faribault Public BA and the academies on the next co-op motion to reform the co-op, I guess.
So, Mr. Sesker, just for clarification, this is simply a formality.
Yep.
To the one family that's participating, they no longer want to. We have to dissolve this and then reapprove it.
Yep.
Okay,
That's right.
Other questions, Mr. Olson?
So homeschoolers, that's a cooperative or?
Only if they're out of district. If they're in district, they're a homeschooler, they automatically can go into our activities. This was out of district in a different school district that wanted to come co-op with us the last couple of years.
Thank you for that education piece. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
Okay, that brings us, thank you. This brings us to item 13C, consider approval of application for cooperative sponsorship girls cross country. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item 13D, consider approval of memo of understanding regarding use of Faribault Middle School ball fields. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Superintendent Sesker, you want to briefly touch on this?
Yeah, this is a memo of understanding that Kane has been working on. Scott, have you been working on that a little bit too?
Very well, we're just going through it.
Yeah, mainly Kane that's worked with the city to allow the city to utilize our junior high fields in case there is some flooding in TP Park.
Superintendent Sesker, I believe we discussed this in our facilities committee meeting. And with this agreement, there are no Faribault Public Schools activities that are displaced or replaced or anything like that with this.
That's correct. Yep, complete collaboration with them.
Okay, thank you. Other items of discussion, questions?
Is there any money coming our way or not?
No, I don't. I think in the terms of maintaining and doing some of the work on the fields, it's more of the, I would say the no dollar amount exchange. They'll do some work on the fields and in turn we'll benefit from that, but there's not any cash actually exchanging for us, so.
And once again, I don't believe there's any guarantee they will be using the fields.
No.
Unless there's issues at TP Park. So
yeah.
it's basically having a backup plan in place should something happen. Other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Kathy Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item 13E, consider approval of the 2022-2023 student handbooks for Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt Elementary Schools. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Steves. I do know that all of these handbooks are attached, and whoever put them together did a great job of identifying on the early page, on the, if you will, the cover page, of any changes that were made throughout the document, or documents, I should say. Superintendent Sesker, is there anything you'd like to add here?
No, just appreciation for the administrators for putting this together and putting that summary in place.
Board members, any questions or comments, further discussion? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you for that. This brings us to item 13F, consider approval resolution 22-25, establishing dates for filing affidavits of candidacy. I will entertain, and this is a resolution, so entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Any discussion on this item? I think it's pretty self-explanatory what's there, but if you have any questions, we could get them answered. Questions, comments, board members? Superintendent Sesker, anything you want to add to it?
Just encouraging people to run.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you for that. This brings us to item 13G, consider approval of resolution 22-26 relating to the election of school board members and calling the school district general election. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll move resolution 22-26.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Mr. Olson. Any further discussion on this item? Once again, I think it's all in front of you and pretty explanatory. Okay, hearing no further discussion, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you for that. That brings us to item 13H, consider approval of Education Identity and Access Management Board Resolution 22-27. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Any further discussion on this item?
Yeah, just that it's my favorite resolution to pass. If you notice the abbreviation on there, it says Iowa. Just pointing that out, just in case nobody noticed that on there, so.
Nobody noticed.
No, I didn't think so, yeah.
I honestly did notice it, and I noticed it's spelled really weird, 3 capitals and 1 lowercase, so I was just curious about
Yeah.
that. But anyway, we'll move on.
Yeah, it's actually just giving the board, giving Jamie the authorization to approve all of the MDE different assignments that we have with our staff so that they can do the great work that they do here at our district.
So you're giving up that authority?
I am. If you approve this, I'm giving it up, yes.
Okay, hearing no other discussion, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item 13I, consider approval to reschedule July work session to July 12th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. I believe that would be moving it from Monday to Tuesday, moving it one night. So I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Yes, Mr. Olson.
Why, again?
The availability of the person that's going to give the survey, so you have those results. He's available that Tuesday, and he's going to go over the survey results with the next item with the group that's going to be getting together. We've talked about, and then the company Baker Tilly will present those results to you on the 12th.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Mr. Olson?
Again, I don't like, I'll be voting no on this, to move, this is a board meeting or work session, a meeting. I think the board should control this. It just, if they're not available Monday, Tuesday, how about Wednesday, how about Saturday? It's not a holiday on the 11th. Again, we pay this firm money, so, we'll show up when we want to. Who's in control, them or us?
Well, I think we are. If we don't want to move it, we can vote this down. At the same token, if they don't have an individual available that night, we might not get the results that night. So I clearly think we're in control as we're voting, if we want to keep it on the 11th or move it to the 12th so that we can make sure that they have representation here and they can give a report on their findings. So at least that's the way I interpret it, but I could be wrong. Any other comments or questions, discussion? Mr. Robichaud?
Chair, just a comment. We have engaged this company to conduct this survey, and then to not hear it and accommodate their convenience a little bit, I think we would be not very prudent in what we're doing with our money.
I'm hopeful that everybody can make it. If not, I'm hopeful that most can make it. I'm not aware of any conflicts. If there are, you can certainly voice those or say those if you can't make it. Any other discussion, comments, questions? Okay, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
No.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 6-1.
Okay, thank you for that. That brings us to item, where are we at? Item 13J, Ad Hoc Levy Committee. This is a discussion only, and so we wanted to, bless you, open this up as we continue to discuss a levy and what that looks like. And Superintendent Sesker, you want to share some thoughts on this?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think that one of the things that we've talked about in the past is that if the board would like some insight, it might be wise to involve some community members to help them not make the decision, but give you guys some feedback of where they believe the community is with regard to going to the voters, particularly if you're going to ask two questions. So the suggestion was maybe we create an ad hoc committee of maybe 20 members or so that can give you guys some advice. I actually kind of turned this over to Cassie, and I don't know, Cassie, if you want to fill in what you guys are thinking and what you guys have talked about. I know that John and Chad were involved in a meeting too earlier, but I'm just going to turn it over to you guys.
Yeah, so this would be in addition to obviously the survey, which is being conducted now. I think I got my phone call last week. This allows us to, I don't know if hand select is the right word, but ask for more community input. Those that are adamantly opposed and those that have questions, and get more community buy-in, community opinion, more of a grassroots effort. There's certainly not going to be the decision to run a levy or any sort of anything obviously lies with us as board members, but it's another layer to opinions, if you will.
Ms. Steves and Mr. Sesker, what would you recommend a timeline for this committee to have a meeting or meetings, likely a couple public meetings based on
Yeah, and I mean, Jamie's working on this right now, and the idea, and certainly ask Jamie to come up too, because I'm kind of
Mr.
phasing
Bent,
out.
do you want to come on up?
It might be better
Thank
to
you.
have Jamie in there, so I don't
Yep.
speak for him. But maybe, Jamie, you can update what your thoughts are about this ad hoc committee and the meeting times.
Yeah, so what we would be looking at is trying to have 2 meetings before the July 12th work session, so that we could then present to you, this is what the committee has said, their feelings about having 1 question versus 2 questions, their feelings about potential language around the questions, looking, do we stay cost neutral for our tax or do we ask for more? It would be nice if we could, I'll be looking at a way to try to also get some of the survey results to that committee and then have them look at it as well to see if that changes their mind any. So,
Yeah, that's a good point too. With the survey results, you're going to get some data about not only some feedback, very similar questions to what we had last time around, and then also that pay tolerance of where the community is with that pay tolerance. That will be presented, and also I know that Katie's working on a plan to make sure that we get all of our voices, particularly with our Somali community and our Latinx community, combined all together by that July 12th. So you guys should have a pretty good picture based on these layers. Obviously, you don't know how the vote's going to turn out, but you should get some pretty good feedback on what people are thinking about with these levies and these questions. So I think it's a pretty good plan.
Mr. Rocha.
Chair, I think it is a good idea. Could this evolve into a campaign committee as well for the levy?
yeah, so the plan was to have 2 separate committees, but by all means, people from this committee could absolutely be on the election committee as well.
So this basically would be just a sounding committee on what do you think, what are the pitfalls, where do we go from here type of.
Exactly, and on this committee, we would be looking at people that are on all sides of the issue.
Good, okay. That's a great idea.
With that said, there could be a couple board members that are involved in this.
Yeah, I like to stick with 2, as you know. I mean, you can go up to 3 legally. The only reason I say that is because you don't want too much voice from a board. It's nice to make sure that the other committee members have some feedback and input. I would say the same thing for administrators. I would limit the number of administrators you have on that committee. Try to get as much parent and community feedback as possible from these groups. It won't be perfect, but it'll be another sounding board that you guys can weigh.
Ms. Steves, since you've had some involvement to this level, would you be willing to be one of the board members involved in this?
Yep, I sure can.
Okay. And do we have another board member that would have an interest in being involved? Mr. Olson, you'd like to be involved? Okay, and we can have up to 3? So, Ms. Lechtenberg, you'd like to be? Do we have anybody else that would like to be involved? Okay, so I'm hearing 3. Ms. Cavalier?
Yeah, I would love to be involved. I'm just going to be in Massachusetts before the 12th, so I don't think it's probably, I don't want to take the spot from someone
Not
else.
just me to Massachusetts.
Okay, well, thank you for your interest and we do have 3 with Ms. Steves, Mr. Olson, and Ms. Lechtenberg that are interested. And I think the hope is that there'll be at least 2 meetings
Yeah.
in the next 2 weeks, and we do have a holiday in there, so we appreciate everybody's efforts and volunteer time and whatever that looks like. If possible, my only recommendation would be to all of you is if there's a way to somehow stagger those times, just in case 5:30 evening doesn't work, but that's up to all of you, and we look forward to the results. Mr. Robichaud.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, how are the members going to be selected? Or have they some idea already? Work through the chamber or?
Yep, so Cassie, I know, has worked on some of the community member pieces of it.
Yeah, so just, brainstorming people in my social, personal and professional circles. Certainly open to suggestions if any of the 3 that are on the group. I know that, as the different suggestions for, going out for a levy or, they're going to affect business owners and farmers in different ways. So reaching out to those groups is really important as well.
Mr. Olson.
Yeah, I think each board member should have 1 or 2 picks. I don't know which, 1 or 2, but I think,
Throw out two if they can't make it.
right. and
Maybe
just-
one can make it.
So, each board member, up to two.
Perfect.
Up to two.
So
They
then-
don't have to, but, Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I certainly understand what Mr. Olson is saying, but for me, I'm going to trust the chamber and Cassie and Mr. Benty and others who have selected. I think they have a good handle on what's going on. I respect what you're saying, Mr. Olson, but I probably will not submit any names.
If you do, Ms. Steves, is that all right if they come to you and
Yep.
you'll work with Mr. Benty in forming that group and scheduling and go from there? Wonderful. Thank you. Just a thank you in advance to any staff members and any community members that volunteer their time for this. We appreciate their feedback and thoughts on this, so thank you. Mr. Olson?
yeah, and then places and time, when and where, how about that?
Yeah, and the sooner you get that information, the better.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay. Any other?
Could I ask some questions here? Can we do a revisit of what the purpose of this committee is now that we've had these second conversations about who's going to serve on the committee? And can we just go back to the beginning and help me understand one more time what exactly is going to happen in the two meetings prior to July 12th?
You want to take that, Ms. Steves, Mr. Benty, Mr. Sesker?
I'll take it last. If you guys don't want it, I'll take it. But do you
Yeah,
guys
so
want it?
I can start. So it's just another layer, I feel like I'm talking really loud. Another layer of discussion, not a random sampling from registered voters, just a kind of a grassroots, if that's the right word, community poll. Obviously, no cost to anyone. This would be very grassroots, kind of hand-selected, but looking at demographics of who would be affected differently, asking their opinions. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it. I think it's just another group of people you can hear about, people that are in the community that directly are affected by the potential levies, and I just think it's another good avenue for you guys to vet the questions.
I guess my question is, are we setting up a committee where people are going to feel like they're debating whether or not we're moving forward with a levy, or opportunities to help the community understand why a levy is important for the community? I don't want to mislead anyone on the committee to think that there's, or in the meetings to think that there's, like Cassie said at the beginning, that they have a sort of a voting vote for whether or not the school district moves forward with a committee, with a levy.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie will visit about this, but I think up front you have to explain to the committee that they give suggestions to the board. They don't give a recommendation to the board. And then their suggestion would be whatever that comes out of that committee. I would assume, but I guess I don't know for sure, that this committee would come to the board and say, hey, we've reviewed all these different facts. This is what we suggest. Then the board gets to vote on whatever they want to vote on.
Ms. Cavalier, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just hope that the whole process works towards our goal of supporting the district and, helping us move forward where we're facing major budget cuts. So I want to make sure that it's a positive-minded experience that's helping the community understand how important this is.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Courtney, that they're going to review is they'll review the data from the survey. So they'll see the numbers to see what the tolerance is going to be with our community. I mean, it could range from $0 to $100. So the committee will review that, and then, again, you guys will be ultimately the decision makers to decide whether or not you want to go one question, which is a zero impact on taxes, or both questions, which could potentially be, on a $250 home, $250,000 home, around $130 per year, or somewhere in between there. So the beauty of the committee that Cassie's talking about is that they don't know yet, and then based on the facts and the information, they can come up with what they think is what would be supported within the community. But yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. great question and questions and good conversation. And once again, thank you to all of you that have volunteered to participate. We appreciate it and look forward to some feedback. Okay, that brings us to item 13K.
Do we
Um,
need to do a roll call?
No, it's just a discussion. It's just a discussion, so I don't think we need to take an action item. There is no action item, so.
Got excited after all
Huh?
this.
That brings us to 13K, superintendent goals for Mr. Benty. For the
Don't go
20
away.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
He tried to escape already.
Superintendent goals for Mr. Benty for 2022-2023. And I will just start this. This is discussion. This year, the Superintendent Evaluation Committee consists of Ms. Cavalier, Mr. Robichaud, and myself. And so we met to put these together as in draft form. These have been pushed out to all of you board members. Once again, I think I spoke about this at our last meeting, and I think this is an area where this board and myself can get better in pushing these goals out sooner. As Mr. Benty's coming in, as he starts July 1st, we thought it'd be really nice to have some goals early on so that he can work with all of his team and really start from the ground running of, hey, this is what I'm going to be measured at, this is where we need to focus on, how are we going to do this together, however he handles that. And so I believe Ms. Cavalier pushed this out to everyone, I don't know, late last week, or I'm sorry, maybe middle of last week or whatever. And so once again, this is draft form. If anybody has any issues with this, please let us know. If you have any other ideas, I think our group of three is pretty adamant, and we've spoken with Mr. Benty as well. Mr. Benty is in agreement with these. He approves of these if we want to move forward like this. I think we're all in agreement that we can't have more than 3 goals. If we have more than 3 goals, just things aren't going to get done, and they're not going to get done in a measured way. You're just spread too thin, and can you really move the needle? So with that, board members, let us know your thoughts on this. If you're in agreement with this, we will look to approve these in July with the understanding that this is what we're moving forward with, right? But any thoughts, questions? Mr. Robichaud, would you like to add anything, or Ms. Cavalier, would you like to add anything before we open it up to everybody?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll just one, unless you want to go first, Ms. Cavalier?
No, go ahead.
Okay. The goals are intended at this point to be a help to Mr. Benty as he ascends into his first year as a superintendent of schools. They were not intended to be in any way a micromanaging goal, probably a little more prescriptive than you might see later on. But, you know, as we take a look at how do we work with Mr. Benty to ensure that he is going to be successful, at least give him all opportunities to do so. So that was one of the underpinnings of why we developed these goals the way they're written.
Ms. Cavalier, any thoughts you'd like to share?
Yes. Mr. Benty and everybody else in the room, I think what we were really trying to do was focus our goals for the year on areas that, Jamie, it's really clear that we're going to have to work on. For example, a lot of turnover in our leadership team, and therefore that just must be part of your work, and we want to honor that part of your work by making it part of your goals. And then we've had so many conversations regarding school climate and academic progress that we want to honor those very, very important items as part of your goals, instead of adding on additional goals that we can work on in future years together in a year when we really need to focus on these major elements. So that was our rationale for moving forward with these 3 areas.
So thank you, Ms. Cavalier. Board members, thoughts, discussion? Yeah, Mr. Olson.
Yeah, just a general question. Jamie's never held a superintendent position at all. When Todd, you know, he was 10, 11 years, 12 years, whatever. So he already knew what. I would just a general question, is it too many goals? I don't know.
You know, that's a great question.
I don't want to overwhelm
Yeah.
really a new guy.
Yeah. You know, when we proposed these to Mr. Benty, he was in agreement with them, and you can certainly speak for yourself.
Yeah, personally, I do not feel that 3 is too many. If you said 5, I'd be like, okay, you know, can we scale it back a little bit? I think 3 is a really reasonable number to be able to do good solid work around each one and have data to back up if you've achieved the goals or not. So,
Great question, Mr. Olson.
Okay.
Other thoughts or questions? Board members, are you okay with these? Once again, our evaluation committee, this is just a framework and a draft, so you can certainly chime in if you're not in accordance with them, but if you are, then we'll put them on the agenda for July and move forward. Fair enough. With that said, I'm not hearing anything, so I think, Mr. Benty, I think it's fair to say that these will be your 3 goals, so I have no idea what this board will or won't look like come January. I would highly, highly recommend that whoever's on this board, there will certainly be at least 3 of you that will be still on this board come January of 2023. There may be more, but at least 3. I would highly encourage that you stick with the mid-year performance review, which would be in January, and then also do the evaluation July-ish timeframe, you know, as the year ends, so that you can, if something is clearly not tracking in January, there's time for everybody to pivot and make some adjustments. So anyway, that would be my recommendation to everyone. This is just a discussion, so I think we're good. Mr. Benty, any thoughts or questions for us?
no, I'm very satisfied with these 3 goals. I think they match very well with what the district needs right now, what we're looking at from our mission and our vision statements. So I think it's a very good place for us to start.
Wonderful. And I just want to reiterate that these goals are set with a superintendent. It's not a hard directive because we have to work in tandem and make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, thank you. Appreciate everybody's time on that, and I really want to thank Mr. Robichaud and a capital thank you to Ms. Cavalier as she put in a tremendous amount of time and effort in putting this together and whatnot. So thank you, Ms. Cavalier. And Mr. Robichaud. So, okay, so this brings us to item 13L, recognition of Superintendent Todd Sesker's service to Faribault Public Schools. Superintendent Sesker, we've got a little gift for you that the school board arranged, and so I'll present that with you, and then if board members, you have any comments, this is the last time you can roast him, if you will, or whatever you want to do, or thank him. But Superintendent Sesker,
I do prefer roasts, so.
there you go, sir.
Thank you very much. I
thank you.
appreciate that. Thanks, you guys.
You're welcome to open it if you want.
Okay.
Is it alive? Oh, yeah.
Ah, cool. Thank you very much. It's heavy. I feel like I won an Oscar. Yeah.
Well, you did.
You did.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, you guys. Appreciate it. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you, and any board members, would you like to comment? Maybe Ms. Cavalier, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'll put you on the spot. If you want to start, any
Sure.
thoughts?
Todd, I just really appreciate everything you've done for the district and to have your steady leadership over the last decade. I know that many people in your shoes and in our field are turning over and having really short tenures. So to have you here as long as we've had has been really great. So thank you for everything you've done for the district. Personally, I've learned so much from you over the last 3 years. Really appreciate how you welcomed me on the board. You had confidence in me right away, and yet you also were right there by my side teaching me every step of the way. So I really appreciate that I got to see the teacher in you along the way as you were superintendent. So thanks for everything. I'm looking forward to hearing about your renovation plans in the coming year and your retirement ventures.
all right. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you. Any other board members? Mr. Olson?
Yeah, I was talking to Todd before the meeting that I'm the only sitting board member that was involved in the interview. Jerry was part of the search committee, the company that we hired, so it's it's been 11 years, 11 years, so, is that correct? 11
That
years?
is correct, you got it.
11 years,
Yep.
so that, from the start to finish, and so it, I don't know what else to say. It's been nice, it's been fun, some challenging times, as you know.
Yep.
That, but, you know, it's time for you to ride off in your horse into the sunset, right?
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the great relationship that we've had over the last 11 years too, Mr. Jones.
Other board members, Mr. Robichaud?
Yes, one thing you've taught me, Todd, is a good decision not to continue being a superintendent of schools. With all seriousness, I met Todd long before he became superintendent of Faribault. When I was doing superintendent searches, I talked to Todd at the Perkins in Northfield about another position, another superintendency, and I distinctly remember him saying, the only district I'm interested in moving to is Faribault. And he was very honest and very open about that. So when Faribault came open, Dick Berge and myself who were working, contacted Todd and said, okay, now here it is, it's open. And he applied, and we're very thankful and very fortunate that you've given us leadership for 11 years, Todd. One of the things that I appreciate about your leadership is your genuine concern about people, about kids, and about the benefit of this district that it has for students. You have demonstrated that over and over again. Your compassion for teaching and learning to make sure that students, all students, are successful. That isn't a characteristic you see in a lot of superintendents, but we are fortunate to have you here for 11 years to demonstrate that compassion for kids. So thank you for all you've done for Faribault, but more importantly for the kids that have attended this school district.
Thanks, Jerry, and thanks to you and Dick for that breakfast at Perkins that got me over the hump. I really,
Did you
really.
pay for that or did I?
I think I picked that tip.
I think I did.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'd echo everything that everyone has said. You know, since the day I met you, I think what I've appreciated most is your collaborative attitude and just, you know, not so much, I don't even know an elegant way to say this, but not saying, no, we can't accomplish this, looking at the problem and saying, yes, how can we accomplish this? And that's with everything that we've encountered together. So I wish you all the best. Sorry I couldn't pull through on the tractor.
It's all right. Maybe in the future I'll get on one of those bulldozers.
Maybe Jamie, I can come through for him. But I appreciate your leadership for sure.
Thanks, Cassie.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, if I may, so congratulations, Todd, on a great career. Not only just your superintendency, but as a teacher, as a coach. And of course, you're being a superintendent in other districts besides this one, and all the kids and employees that you came in contact with and really made a positive difference. And I truly respected and enjoyed my time when you were superintendent. I was a teacher and as a union leader as well as a board member. So thanks for all you have done, and congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that, John.
I want to thank you also for moving this district forward. I know we're in a much better place than we were when you came, and you're a big part of that to thank. And also, just your presence at all of the activities that you attended outside of your school day was always impressive. Seeing you at baseball, at the high school, at all different hours of the evening and Saturdays, it was very impressive. So thanks for all you've done.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Leah.
I get to go. You know, I think Kathy's emotions probably sum up mine a bit.
Shading her.
There's certain people that work with people that are really excited to see them leave, and there's certain people that are sad to see them leave. And
If We've
You
been
never,
through some-
you never moved here.
Yep.
However, I am certain you gave 100%. You busted your tail day in and day out. I remember being on the phone with you at 5:30 in the morning. I remember being on the phone with you at 3:30 in the morning. I remember celebrating. I'll take that back. I remember the disappointment of a levy failure and bawling like I've never bawled before because of the amount of effort and dedication you put in, and it doesn't come out in your favor. And I remember celebrating the passing of a levy and what that means to our students and to our community. And so 11 years, I got to work with you for 8 of the years. Richard was on the hiring team, the board that hired you. I got to be, at that time, part of the interview process as a community member. And I think there was 11 candidates that we went through, and I think you were the first one that interviewed in our group, and you were the one that got hired. And I just want to wish you and your family joy, nothing but the best of, everything in your future endeavors. Don't be a stranger. It's good that you're living a little closer, and just truly from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of my family's heart, we thank you for everything you've done. Thank you.
Appreciate that. I'm going to need that. Thank you. Those are super kind words, and just a great board that I've had the privilege of working with, and others that were here. Remember Deb Davis and Tom Casper and now I can't remember all of them. The doctor over at the hospital, what was his name? James Wolf. Yep. And it's terrible because I just saw him last week. Yeah. Jason Ingbrecht. Yep. John Curry. John, many of you saw him at the retirement party, wishing him well and the best. And I'm sure I'm missing a few. Yvette. Yep. Howard Bodie. Howard was at the retirement party too. But I've really had the good fortune of being around some great board members, not only here, but also in Cannon Falls and Goodhue, and some great people in Spring Grove too. But I mean, you work with the best, and you get some of the best results. And we've done some really fantastic things in this district. MCA scores to me have never meant really anything other than being able to evaluate the curriculum and make some changes for it. It's the people that you work with and the people that you are able to hire, and I think our staff we have one of the best staff that I've ever been able, had the privilege to ever work with. So we have been through some pretty rough times, and we've been through some pretty good times. And I can safely say that all of them have been positive experience in how they've ended up. Even the failed referendums that we've had that really have been tough to swallow, and then coming back the following years and coming back and passing those 2 operating levies. So it's been bittersweet, this retirement, not resignation, this retirement, but I am looking forward to spending more time with William. Yeah. Stop it. And of course, my wife, Joy, so. I gotta say that in there too. It's always good. Yeah, she's part of that whole process. So. She's been a great support over the years, and I can't thank her enough. So she's been a big, big piece of this. So good luck to you. You got Jamie. You're in good hands, and I'm sure that a lot of these programs that you've already started are going to even do better than what we've had. Jamie, I'll introduce you to your new boss, Kathy. She is awesome, and we've been through a lot together too. And okay. So thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. This brings us to item 14A, other items of information. School board members, the floor is yours if you'd like to talk about anything. Ms. Cavalier, maybe I'll start with you. If you have anything you'd like to say or mention.
No, I just wish I was there for that. That was really sweet, everybody.
Thank you.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. We'll try to keep moving along. It's getting dark out there, and the Panera probably closes at some point. So, Anybody, any thoughts, comments?
I would just, Mr. Chair, one comment, and again, Todd, wishing you well. We also had another cabinet member who is moving on in our community ed director, and I just wanted to publicly thank her, Dr. Leland, for all that she has done in our community ed program. She was given a ball of clay when she first came here and molded that into one of the best community ed programs in the state of Minnesota, second to none. And so I want to personally wish her the very best, and even though she's going to that Edina place, but she's done a world of good for community ed in this district. So public, we want to wish her the very best.
Thank you, Mr. Robichaud. Any other board members? Mr. Robichaud, I will second your comments with regards to Ms. Leland, and wish her nothing in her and her family nothing but the best in their new endeavors, and did a wonderful, wonderful job here, and we're lucky to have somebody like Mr. Pruitt come in and hopefully continue that and onward and upward. And then just one other comment I want to mention. I spoke with Mr. Bellingham last week, I guess, and last year, no, not last year, there was no election of school board members last year. 2 years ago, we started a process where we had a couple informal meetings with school board candidates or whatever, people that were thinking about running, and maybe even those people who had filed to run. But we thought it went really, really well, and so I know Mr. Bellingham, in speaking to him, is willing to lead a couple more open forums, if you will, open meetings. If people are interested in running, where we can give them a little bit of education of, hey, this is what your normal month looks like. These are the committees that you, if elected, you get to choose to be on, or, of interest. And just, how do you prepare in the learning curve? As we all know, there's a learning curve, and you know a lot more in year 2 than you do in year 1. And I know Superintendent Sesker, several members thanked you for helping educate us, and that's a big thing, right? We learn from each other. So this is an opportunity just to make sure that people know if they're going to run of what's kind of expected to them, and welcome it. And so I think, Mr. Bellingham, you'll lead that, and how are we going to kind of publish that? Or you'll work with Ms. Zavrall to figure something out, and we'll go from there?
That sounds good.
Okay, perfect.
Well, probably, I think their filing ends at, I believe, August 16th or something like that. So probably about anytime that week of around the 1st of August, around in there, we'll do a couple of sessions in here, and like we did last year, and just go from there. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for doing
I think
this.
we did it after the filing was over last year, but this year we'll do it before to, thing like that. So,
Yeah, that's something we've learned of. Why
Right.
not educate people on the front end if they're interested? So,
Right.
Yeah, I know I did find that really, really helpful and insightful, so thank you for that.
Good. Okay. Any other comments, board members? Okay, hearing none. Item 14B, Superintendent Sesker, this is your last chance.
Well, I'll take advantage of
He's
this
gonna
to
roast us.
also recognize Ann Leland. Ann's been with me for 10 years, and you're right, Jerry, she took it from pretty much nothing to what it is today, which is pretty exceptional. I just talked about earlier today how full the preschools are now, and the amount of students that Faribault Public Schools early childhood program has drawn. So a big thanks to Anne Marie for all of what she has done for this school district. I really, really appreciate her. Glad she wasn't here, because then I'd be bawling even more. So thank you, Anne Marie. We had a nice FEEP committee. That's our foundation basically for teachers to write grants. I just encourage Jamie, maybe this is another note, to reach out to Ken Butso. He'll be the chair of that committee again, just to reach out, maybe have a cup of coffee with Ken sometime in the future to understand that a little more. A big thank you to the folks organizing that retirement celebration. I feel like it's kind of overkill now, but thank you very much for that. I know Kathy had a lot to do with that, and other staff, and thank you everybody who were involved in that. My mom and dad were up here, so that was pretty cool. Of course, Joy was in there, and my 3 girls came, so that was super cool. And then, of course, my wild man, William Wallace, was there too. he was running all over the place, so enjoy chasing him behind. So thank you, Kathy, for that. I do want to mention, I got my fix of kids today. Summer STEAM is going strong. Roosevelt has basically the K-5 preschool kids too. So I was able to get in there, see them at nap time. If you ever get a chance, that's the coolest part of the day for those preschoolers to walk in there while they're taking their cute little naps and they're all sound asleep. And I know Wendy, Susan was working on one of the kids who had not taken a nap all year, and she finally went to sleep. So that's great. A big thank you to Val Henry. She's leading the summer STEAM program this year. She, as you know, has her she's working towards her administrator. I don't know, Jamie, if she's completed it yet or not, but she's getting pretty close. But another up-and-coming administrator, and she's doing a great job with our summer STEAM program. And yeah, with that, I'd just like to thank the entire school district. Tomorrow will be my last real day here. My official day is till June 30th, and really looking forward to retirement. I'm sort of smiling here. That's that bittersweet back and forth.
Never retire.
Yeah, I know. So we're going to take it easy for a few months and then see what happens. But thanks for the entire district and the incredible support I received over the last 11 years. So thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 15, dates to remember, information only. July 12th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. is our work session. If you remember, that is the one that we approved tonight. And then July 25th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. is our next board meeting. I will be absent. I will not be here at that, so Mr. Bellingham will be leading that. And Mr. Benty, that'll be your first official superintendent board meeting. So, welcome. With that said, I will look to move into our closed session as we have our final superintendent evaluation. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this, and we'll come back in 5 minutes and do that. So I'll entertain a motion to close this meeting, and then we'll open a closed session.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we move into closed session for superintendent evaluation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Mr. Robichaud. Any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
She might not be.
I'm here.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you for that. So everybody from the public has to leave this meeting. Somehow we need to figure out how do we leave Courtney on so she can participate in the closed session, and then hopefully you guys can tell us what to do. Wonderful, thank you. Everyone have a wonderful 4th of July. Safe travels if you're heading somewhere.